Hello, my name is Nan Onkka, and I am an artist here in Grand Marais. And I am here at the Grand Marais Art Colony to bring you our second watercolor lesson. We are in the middle of our 3-part watercolor series, so you should have received a lesson in January. This is February's lesson, and then we'll have one more lesson in March. Today we are going to do a watercolor project that I'm calling Snowy Mittens. And so we are going to be making some really colorful mittens with a snowy background. And I have lots of different examples, some are small and some are big, of the type of mittens that you could make, okay? For this project, you are going to need the watercolor kit that you received in January. You also are going to need a pencil with an eraser and just some scratch paper. So it could be any kind of paper. It doesn't have to be fancy and it doesn't have to be this big. You're going to need your watercolor paper. I cut mine in 2, which is an option if you want to work a little smaller or make 2, or you can keep it as one big piece. You're going to need a cup with water. And I should clarify that your watercolor kit needs to have a brush in it. So if you don't have a brush in it, you'll need to find a brush. And then lastly, in the kit that you received, in the bag of supplies, there's going to be one single white crayon. And we are going to need this for our project as well today. So make sure that you have a nice place to work. The first part of our project is just drawing. The second part of our project is painting. So once we get to the painting part, you want to make sure you have a nice, clean, clear and easy to clean workspace so that you don't accidentally spill any water or paint on anything on your table or desk. So once we have all those things ready, we'll get started on our project. Part 1 of our Snowy Mittens watercolor painting. So to start, you're going to need a scratch piece of paper. It doesn't have to be this big and it doesn't have to be a clean piece of paper. Just any kind of paper will do. And you're going to need a pencil with an eraser, just in case you make a mistake. So what I want you to do is first practice drawing a mitten. So there's a couple ways to do this. You could put your hand on the paper and simply trace so that it's life size. And my hand is probably bigger than your hand. And you could do it like that. Okay, have one mitten. Or you could, I'm just gonna flip mine over. You could draw a smaller mitten or a bigger mitten than your hand. So you could freehand drawing a mitten, okay? So that's a good mitten shape. Another thing that you could do is draw 2 mittens, and I liked doing it this way because it looked like I was trying to catch snowflakes, but you could do it any way that you wanted. And these ones are just, I traced my hand upside down. Or you can just stick with a single mitten like this one. It's really up to you. So once you have your mitten shape, I want you to make sure that you also add a cuff. So a cuff could be poofy, like this one, or it could be kind of stripy, like this one. There's lots of different ways. So I'm gonna do a stripy one because I like stripes. So I'm gonna do it like this, the cuff around the bottom. And then also, I don't want a floating mitten in space, so I'm gonna add my coat sleeve there, okay? So make sure you add the wrist connecting to the arm so that it goes off the page, however long those lines need to be so that you don't have a floating mitten. Great, now the next step is to divide your mitten into 4 or more sections, including the cuff, which I already did, and a thumb section. So I'm gonna draw a line right there for my thumb. And then I'm gonna divide the rest into just a few sections. So I wouldn't do a lot of sections because it will get more complicated. So I did 1, 2, 3, 4, plus a cuff, okay? Now is the fun part. You get to decide what kind of design and pattern you want inside your mitten. So I did lots of different things. I did polka dots on this one. I did stripes and diamonds on this one. Since we're around Valentine's Day, you could do hearts. I did triangles on this one. And this one I just did kind of stripe. There's chevrons. They're like a bent stripe, kind of. So let me think about what I would like to do on this one. I think I would like to do a zigzag. And I'm not gonna do really small details because it's gonna be kind of tricky with the crayon, which is our next step. So I'm just gonna keep it pretty big and not detailed. And this one I'll just put one there. Okay, so now I have my drawing how I wanted it. And if I made a mistake, I could erase. This is just your practice, okay? So what I'm gonna do is, now that I'm happy with this and I feel confident, I am going to move on to the next step. Okay, part 2 of our project is to start drawing the wax resist. So for my demo, because I want to work a little faster to show you, I cut my paper in half. And like I said earlier, you can do this if you want to make 2, or if you want 1 for practice and 1 for your final, or if you want to just make 1 big one, that's great too. I just want to keep it small so that I don't take too long in my instructions. So now that I have my watercolor paper, this is the thicker paper that came in your kit from the art colony. I'm gonna redraw what I just drew, and this time I'm gonna try to draw it light because I've already drawn it once. Drawing it light helps, it will make it look a little nicer in the end, and also it helps if you make a mistake. And I can tell that I made this thumb too small. So I'm gonna make the thumb a little bigger. I'm drawing nice and light on my final watercolor paper. And then I wanna make sure I don't have a floating mitten in space, so I added that. Now I'm going to basically do exactly what I did before. I'm just making a copy. So I did my zigzags up here. Again, I'm not getting too fancy at this stage. Oh, I forgot this one. Okay, so mine is done. If you, for some reason, made mistakes or you drew a little too heavy, you can just take your eraser really lightly and lightly erase to make some of the areas not so dark. Okay. So that is the drawing part. Now I'm going to take our special supply this week is a crayon, and it's a white crayon. And a crayon is made out of wax, and water does not like wax. So what we're doing with this crayon is making a wax resist. And it's kind of cool because the when I draw with this, the watercolor won't spread over it. And you'll see what I mean. So what we're going to do is trace over everything that you just drew with your white crayon. If for some reason you don't have a white crayon, any crayon will work, but I like white for this project. What I want you to think about is you want to press kind of hard. I actually pressed so hard that I broke my crayon, so I had to tape it back together. I don't know if you can see it, but I want you to press kind of hard and make the lines a little thick. So you can see I'm kind of going back and forth over my lines. You also want to pay attention to which lines you've done, because as you can see, it's really hard to see the white crayon on the white paper. So I'm going to go around the top first. I'm just trying to kind of plan it out so that I know. And then I'm going to do the cuff. And I want to do all the lines, which is why I told you not to get really complicated with your patterns. I'm going to do each of these ones. I'm kind of going back and forth a little bit so that the crayon gets thick. And I'm doing this section. It's very easy to accidentally forget one of the lines. So I did that section. Now I'm going to do my thumb section. And now I'm going to do the middle section. And now, last but not least, the top section. When you think you're done, I would ask a friend, a classmate, a family member to look and see if they can tell if you missed anything, because it's really hard to see. You can feel it a little bit, but really you need to look very carefully. Okay, so we've done the wax resist for the mitten. Now we're on to the next part. Part 3 of our snowy mittens is painting the mitten. So the first thing I want you to make sure you do is, now that we're moving on to painting, make sure you have your painting supplies. So your watercolor and brush. You'll also need water, and make sure you clear out your table or desk so that there's nothing else. There's no electronics or books or anything that you could potentially spill on. If you want to put newspaper down, that's great. Otherwise, just have some paper towel handy in case you need it if you spill. So once your station is kind of set up, then you need to make sure you have clean water. And just like we learned last month, I like to just kind of charge my watercolors with a little water so that they soften. So I'm just taking a little bit of clean water, rinsing my brush out, just to soften them up, because they're probably pretty dry if you haven't used them for a few weeks. Okay, now my watercolors are ready to go. I am going to think about what colors I want in my mitten. The only thing that I would pay attention to is the background of your painting is going to be the sky. So for most of you, I think that means it will probably be blue, or maybe it might be gray or kind of a purple, or you could make it a different color. But if you're gonna make it blue, then I wouldn't put a lot of blue in your mitten, because then it won't stand out as much. That doesn't mean you can't use blue. I just wouldn't use a lot of it. Personally, I'm going to use some warm colors. So warm colors are colors that remind you of the sun. So orange and yellow. This is another orange, kind of a reddish pink, because I think they're just bright and cheery. So what I'm going to do is use the wet on dry technique, which means that I'm using my wet paint on the dry paper. We talked about this last lesson. And I'm just going to start painting in my shapes. And you'll notice that when you get close to the edge, can you see that right there? It runs into the wax, the crayon, and it kind of stops. So this is a nice way to be able to paint a lot of your painting without worrying about the colors spreading to each other. So we've kind of made barriers in between each one. So I'm gonna I'll do pink next. There you can see it didn't really paint up there because I had the crayon. And I'm going to keep painting this. I'll do this color down here. Also, feel free to mix colors. So if I want to mix a color, I'm just going to take my paintbrush, clean paintbrush, and let's say I want kind of a yellowish orange. So I'm going to take my orange and just put some over here. And I'll rinse my brush out, take some yellow, put it over here, and it makes a nice yellow orange. If I want it lighter, I can add more water. Let's see what color I made. Oh, that's a nice color. So feel free to mix your own colors. That's one of the most fun parts about painting. Add my yellow here. I'm trying to do this kind of fast as my demonstration. So let's see, I'm gonna add a little more orange to this one. I think it needs to be a little darker. Now I'll do this one up here. Oh, I forgot to do it down here. Okay. I need yellow for this one. I'm not thinking too hard about what color goes where, because the warm colors that I picked all kind of look nice together automatically. But I guess what I did is I'm doing kind of I did these two sections the same, and so maybe I'll do these two sections the same. And I'll do pink at the bottom. And orange at top. Okay, now I have to do the cuff. And I guess the cuff could either be the cuff of your mitten or the cuff of your coat. And maybe I will do, I'm gonna mix a purple. I'm gonna mix pink with some blue to make a purple. So I'm gonna do this. It'll go every other. And I'm trying to think what color I want to do in between. I think I'll just do pink. Those will look nice. Oops. When I crossed the wax part, it skipped over this part and went into the purple, and they blended together a little bit. So that is one thing that you have to pay attention to. And I'm gonna make my coat kind of a dark bluish purple. Okay, so there we have the mitten. We're done with part 3. Part 4, the snowy background. I'm going to carefully move my painting. It's still wet, so I want to carry it really flat. I'm just going to shift it a little out of my workspace. And I'm going to get my scratch piece of paper that I started with. So the snowy background, the first thing we're going to do is practice drawing some snowflakes. And you can do this again on your scratch paper. Oh, it's getting a little wet, that's okay. All snowflakes are different, so you can draw many different types. I like to draw some that are big, some that are little, some that have more detail, and some that are simple. On your handout, I did draw a few examples for you, so if you need some inspiration, you can go there. The simplest snowflake is just making an X and then adding one more line. So that's a very simple one that you can make little or big. I like to make little ones like that because it's hard to get a lot more detail than that when you're drawing with crayon. For the big snowflakes, you could start with a shape like a diamond and then add the lines coming out. And you could do that many, you could add more, it's really up to you. You could do a circle and do the same thing, have these coming out. And then you could add more circles on the tips. You could do multiple diamonds, like have one diamond within another diamond. That could be kind of cool. And have the lines coming out here. You could just add little lines at the tips, like this, or circles like we did before, maybe circles just on some of them. There's so many different ways to make snowflakes, so have fun, but again, I want you to think about making some little ones, some big ones, and filling the background. So filling all of the space in your, the background of your painting. Once you feel pretty good about drawing snowflakes, then we're gonna bring our painting back. Hopefully your painting has dried by this point. I see mine's a little wet over here, so I'm just going to be really careful. And now what I'm going to do is draw with the white crayon. And I'm gonna do this without drawing with pencil. If you absolutely need to draw with pencil, you can, that's totally fine. But I think it looks really cool when I draw without pencil. So I'm gonna start just with some very simple ones. And I don't wanna put my hand in there. So let's see, let's do a diamond one. I know you can't really see what I'm doing, so you're just gonna have to trust that I'm doing something very cool. And I wanna make sure, even though not all of my snowflakes are really detailed, I wanna make sure there's enough of them to see them. So I wanna kind of fill the background. If your painting is dry, you can kind of tip it to see where you've drawn them or where you haven't. I'm having a hard time seeing, so we might just have to go for it, okay? So hopefully I made enough. I think I should add one. Let's see, I feel one there. I think I should add one here. I can't really tell if I made one there or not. Okay, so this is kind of the magical part. Now, for the last part of our painting, you're going to want clean water. So I went and switched my water out for clean water. And you want to think about what kind of background color you want. For me, I think I want kind of you don't want a super light color, but I think I want a little lighter than these colors. So I'm going to take this one and mix it over here. Let me move this so you can see it. Mix this over here. Oh, and a little purple got in, but that's fine with me. And then I'm going to take some water and add that. And you know what? I think I want a little purple in mine. I think that will look nice. Okay, now, this is the fun part. I'm gonna start painting and we'll see. Oh, there's a snowflake. How cool. So I'm just gonna keep painting. Once you have once your paper's wet, then you can add wet on wet technique. You could add some little blobs of color and it will kind of just spread. We talked about wet on wet technique last month with our first watercolor lesson. And it's okay if your color changes as you go. Oh, there's another one. That's cool. I want it to look kind of nice and even, so I'm trying to keep things wet. Oh, there's another one. It's kind of fun to find them. Okay, so I'm gonna add a little more purple to mine. Oh, there's another one. Feels magical, like when it's snowing outside. Oh, there's a little one. That one didn't work very well. That's okay. Oh, here's a cool one. Let's see, let's make that one a little darker. The darker you paint, the more you're gonna see. It's creating more contrast. I like that it's kind of surprising. You can't really tell where your snowflakes are or what they're gonna look like until you paint over them. I think I put another, oh good. I'm glad I put another one down here. That's a fun one to end on. So now that your paper is all wet, you can continue to paint on it if you want to add some more colors, or maybe there's some areas that you'd like a little darker so that you can see the snowflake a little better. I just had one that didn't turn out very well up here, but that's okay. All snowflakes are different, so it doesn't really matter. And there you have it. There's my finished watercolor painting. Oh, I think I want to add just a little right here. Now that it's finished, let it sit flat to dry. If you have to move it so that you can do something else at your workspace, just move it flat like this. Don't tip it because it might drip. Just move it flat and put it somewhere else. And then it's time to clean up. So what you want to do is just rinse your brush out. My water's really clean. Rinse your brush out until it's clean. You can test it on a paper towel to see if you got all the color out. You can put that back here. And then I like to just leave this open to dry. If you don't have the space or time to do that, you can just damp it or blot it with a dry paper towel. And then lastly, you'll want to wipe down your table. Once you're done with that, everything, you're done with everything. So great job. Congratulations, artists, on creating a wonderful painting. Maybe you are still working on yours, and that's just fine. I hope that you continue to use your watercolors at home or in school, as well as playing around with the wax resist. It's such a fun thing to learn how to do. I will see you again next month with a new project, our final one. So until then, take care. Bye.